Okay, the last one, persuasion. This is listed in the textbooks, just in case you want to know. This has just been used to remind me. I've taken no examples from here, by the way. Old-fashioned, bit out of date, but it gave me the list of 8, and I added tariffs because tariffs are listed in a separate place. That's what I used it for. But any economics textbook like that will take you through this with no problem at all. There's no need for me to type this up. Go and get one from a second-hand bookshop or occasionally from a charity shop, and you just skim through it. Just take a look at government controls and work it out for yourself. Don't have to believe me. Persuasion, waste of time. The EU, on the subject of persuasion in the EU, it has never responded to persuasion by its population, small businesses or anyone else, except the thousands and thousands of very, very rich lobbying organisations that own every single property for acres in the inner city landscape around the Brussels Parliament. They spend all day, every day, in the Parliament lobbying the Council of 20, the bureaucrats and the MEPs, and they take their big fat wallets with them. You can have a referendum in the EU until your eyes go black with death, and they will ignore it. So, summary. What does the EU centrally control? Indirect taxation? In ways that, let's face it, cannot and do not suit all countries. That creates economic efficiency. They control subsidies. They eliminate a useful, short-term, but dangerous tool, and they allow whole industries to disappear. For example, our steel industry. Buffer stocks, butter mountains, all the rest of that stuff. Regulation, the economy killer. Okay, subsidies and tariffs, economy killers. But regulation, that alone. Okay, subsidies and tariffs, economy killers. Regulation, economy killer. All these things are causing the EU economy to flatline at best. The only one that's growing is Germany. What does it not centrally control? Persuasion, price controls, pollution permits and local regulation. You see, the problem is that when you centrally control taxation policy, subsidy policy, tariffs, buffer stocks control, regulation, it all increases costs to businesses and to the consumer. So business suffers increased variable costs. So the consumer has to spend more to get the product or the service that they want or need. Because it costs more, both business and consumer therefore have less disposable income. They've already spent it. Therefore, they produce, the businesses produce less, and the consumers purchase less. Produce less, purchase less. What does that add up to? Therefore, the EU economy produces less gross domestic product. And by the way, so does the UK economy, because we are affected by this. What's the knock-on? Because of this reduced gross domestic product, both the EU economies and the UK economies are not growing out of recession. Because demand is low, businesses don't expand. They can't. And therefore, they do not invest. They haven't got the money. And therefore, they do not innovate, because they haven't got the money. All they're doing is aiming to survive. That's what you do during a recession. You aim to ride out, that's the term that's used, the recession, without going bust. That's the term that's used. Now, what's happening in the rest of the world? Meanwhile, India, China, Australia, Korea, Indonesia, I could go on for a while, they are not so deeply in recession. They are growing. Their governments are collecting more tax. The industries are investing. The industries are innovating. And therefore they're trading internationally, globally. Because of this, the contrast between the rest of the world and the EU is steadily falling behind the international innovation game. This is a no-brainer. Now, don't believe me. By all means, call me an idiot. I could not care less, frankly. So listen to Mervyn King, ex-governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Marshall, 6/3/2016. Now, Mervyn King is spoken of by some people as an economic genius. I think that's overstating it. In 2008, the world economy and the British economy was at the top of the boom end of the cycle, of the business cycle, the economic cycle. So you've got growth, boom, slide, bust, growth, right? So we were at the top of the growth cycle and have been for a while. The Blair-Brown government had claimed, in a moment of frankly insanity, that they had put a stop to boom and bust. That's Brown. So they made no provision whatsoever for bust. While Mervyn King was the governor of the Bank of England, neither did the Bank of England. Now, can I comment? Need I comment on the irresponsibility shown? Even if you believe that you've put a stop to boom and bust, to make no provision for it whatsoever is beyond negligence, and that is exactly what the Bank of England did not do. It did not make any provision at all, and neither did the British government under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. The result was inevitable, following Keynesian economics, which has been proved to be true continuously since 1900. Keynes based Keynesian economics on what he had seen from 1900 to about 1950. And it has been successfully predicting, roughly speaking, what will happen ever since. So is Mervyn King a genius? No. Is he a brilliant economist? Yes. Is the Bank of England excellent, as has been recently claimed, at predicting what will happen? Well, you work it out. They should have been waiting for the slide in the economic cycle. They were not. They made no prep whatsoever. It was unexpected. By the way, same true of the IMF, the CBI. By the way, the Confederation of British Industries has not got a single prediction right in 100 years. Not one. The OECD also didn't foresee the 2008, and yet that was the place where it should occur in the economic cycle. Okay, so what did Mervyn King, who I would say is an outstanding economist, but not a genius, what does he say about the EU? I quote from the Andrew Marr Show. The EU has, I'll start that again, the EU has, if not an economic disaster, a very serious problem. So he isn't denying that it's an economic disaster at all. He then says later, slightly later, that hostility to Germany is increasing across the EU because the economic arithmetic has led them inexorably to it. Who are they? Italy, the rest of Europe. The economic arithmetic has led them inexorably to it, which is why in the longer run the euro area, not the EU, is something we should all be concerned about. On the collapse of the euro affecting the UK economy, still the same interview, later on. Will the euro, the collapse of the euro area, which he is basically indicated as likely by saying if it's not an economic disaster, it's a very serious problem, okay? What does he say about its effect on the UK economy? That will be true in or out. So whether we are in the European Union as we are now, or whether we are out, we will be affected. Obviously, that is correct. Then the next bit that he says a little bit down the line. Now, the first word, this, is a reference to the survival of the euro area. Okay, this is going to be a battle between the political will of an elite that created this, the euro area, and daren't now admit that it was a mistake, and the economic arithmetic. So this is going to be a battle between the political will of an elite and the economic arithmetic. I'm just taking the middle bit out to make it clearer. That's what he's saying. And we're all going to suffer from that. Okay, let me read the whole thing for you, now you can get it. This is going to be a battle between the political will of an elite that created this and daren't now admit that it was a mistake, and economic arithmetic. And we're all going to suffer from that. Doesn't matter whether we're in or out. Now you think, which is the worst? You see, I'm afraid that the future that you are choosing between in or out, it's more than that. What you are considering economically, that's what I'm talking about, purely economics. I'm not interested in migration other than it affects economics. I'm not interested in sovereignty or democracy other than it affects economics. So this is a purely economic little talk, big talk. The question that you should consider as part of your choosing is, what makes short, medium and long-term economic sense? What makes short, medium and long-term economic sense? The third part of this guide will concern border controls and the flow of people, therefore, and the EU's effect on that and on the UK economy, just the UK economy. Now, I realise that all this is tending one way. However, I promise you, and this is not a political promise, this is a real promise, I'm not tilting the table. The reason it tends one way is because that is the economic arithmetic. It's as simple as that. If you sit and think about it, get yourself a textbook. Not necessarily that one. Just get yourself a simple economics textbook. Take a look. Go through the same things I've just gone through in a textbook. Take a look at it. Apply it to the EU and see what comes out at the end. And you will come up with the same economic arithmetic. Because John Maynard Keynes was right. Full stop. Does that mean that you should vote to leave? No. This is only one aspect of the debate. It's only one aspect. Now, is it conclusive? To me, yes. You see, I want to be able to go to the Bridgewater Hall in Manchester and listen to a concert. And if the economy's shot, it isn't going to be there. That's my logic. Anyway, I hope this is helping you, and thank you for putting up with me.